The following is a presentation of the High Spot Podcast. Making their way to the ring, talking about the world of professional wrestling, the team of Jeff Martin and the trendsetter, Bryan Perga, the Jersey Wrecking Crew.
What is going on, guys? You are listening to the High Spot Podcast. I am Jeff Martin, alongside my tag team partner, Bryan Perga. We are the Jersey Wrecking Crew. Follow us on all our social media at High Spot Podcast. We are on the road to WrestleMania. We're going to talk to Chris Van Vliet today. We're going to recap the Royal Rumble, some NWA Power, Trendsetter. What is going on, my man? How are you doing? You look refreshed, and you definitely look like someone who, I don't know if you got some sun, but you definitely got a lot of interviews at AVN. What is up, Trendsetter?
Well, I find it funny you said I look refreshed. I look actually more exhausted than I've ever done before.
Like
I know
crap.
You do, and they can't take a look at us. But I would have more respect for you. Granted, I have no respect for you to begin with if you just called it like it is. I have bags under my eyes, guys. Just came back from Las Vegas not too long ago doing the AVN convention there. Got a whole bunch of interviews will be out by 2024. And because God knows, we all know how quickly it takes me to turn these things around. Now, hopefully by next week they're all done. Not hopefully, by next week they'll be all done. Great, man. You know, it's funny that wrestling never stops. And what we've been going through, what I was looking forward to, believe it or not, was to see the outcomes of the Royal Rumble. Because as we spoke before, guys, about the Royal Rumble and kind of talking about the anticipation for it, I was a downer, I'll admit it, because I wasn't thinking anything they're doing storyline-wise was building up any anticipation. But after watching the Royal Rumble, I would like to say I was pleasantly surprised. I will retract my previous statement. It was a pretty exciting Royal Rumble. Granted, there's some things we kind of saw that were going to happen, but then the outcome of the main event, which was the Royal Rumble itself, left a lot of excitement, some nice returns, and again, we are now officially, guys, on that road to WrestleMania. It is there. We are in the car, and we're ready to drive down that road. It's I-95? You can take I-95 all the way down to Florida. Yeah. Yep, we are there.
Yeah, and again, Royal Rumble is one of my favorite events to watch, again, because it's a surprise.
Oh, you're watching so much nostalgia. You're watching so much Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I was posting on our Instagram.
Yeah.
I was putting... I was
not just posting, you're watching it, too, on the network.
92, 90. I got my fix of the Something to Wrestle With, because they were going back to the 90, 95, and all I can think about was how bad the participants were in the Royal Rumble. Mm-hmm. And that's the one that Shawn Michaels won, coming in at number one. Mm-hmm. A lot of Royal Rumble. Very excited. Like I said, it's one of my favorite events, and it didn't disappoint as far as like the outcome. Drew McIntyre is going to WrestleMania to take on Brock Lesnar. Wow. Charlotte, we still don't know who she's going to fight, but there's a lot of rumors coming around now that it could be Rhea Ripley, the NXT champion, not women's champion, the NXT champion. Now that we have to be
politically correct.
Politically correct, exactly. So that could happen. So there's so many things going on. The build between Brock and Drew, and how well Brock Lesnar sold for Drew McIntyre. A lot of people,
not just him, Keith Lee as well.
Keith Lee
making the debut at the Royal Rumble.
You know, and you could, if you go on social media where it's sometimes toxic, and obviously he was very toxic when Brock Lesnar was mowing him down left and right. And then there was a method to the madness, because that was all made so that when Drew McIntyre did eventually eliminate him, that the crowd popped, and you saw that. And that's the psychology. Don't think these guys in the back, yes, you can complain about creative, but they, at the end of the day, though, they still remember the wrestling basics, and that stuff drew a pop. And Drew McIntyre has got tons of support heading into Tampa, into WrestleMania, because the fans are going to want to see a brand new WWE champion. And Brock Lesnar did a tremendous job. I defended him on Twitter for it. Not that he needs defending, but I thought it was a good Royal Rumble match, both of them.
I thought so too. It finally clarified the thing that we were dealing with the most. We had no idea what was going into, or what the mood or the tension was from the company standpoint, what direction they were going. But maybe it was done on purpose, and I'll have to give them credit where credit is due. That maybe it was purposely done so that we wouldn't be able to guess what direction they're going in. Because most Royal Rumbles, at least for the most part, Jeff, you kind of have an idea of where they're going or where they may go in terms of who they want to win the Royal Rumble leading to WrestleMania. But this one, you didn't have a decisive idea, so it was a pleasant surprise, to say the least.
And we got to talk about Edge making his return He did deny it during a lot of interviews. You have to deny it, I guess. He never went to Pittsburgh. He never signed a new deal. But the rumors going around, so many rumors going around, and that's why you love the Royal Rumble, because you try to, see which one's fact, which one's not. And I think that's the best pay-per-view. That's the best event to have rumors, because you just don't know, what's going to happen. And so seeing Edge, and I'm like, God, Michael Cole said that he had a triple neck fusion. And I'm thinking to myself, who recovers from that? And then Edge does, and it's the athlete, it's the determination, it's that will that's inside you that makes athletes. And make no mistake about it, he is an athlete.
That's true.
Differentiates it from everybody else. That's why he is a pure athlete. And then he mentioned too that he has something, that a lot of people don't have, and that's grit, that desire. He had another neck surgery to come back to it.
Yeah,
tremendous. Glad to have him back. Very emotional. And
when I got most of it, Jeff, most of all, everything you just said is correct. But what I got the most of it, you talk about the grit, all that stuff. But what I got from it is that he was somebody for the longest time, and you can tell when with any athlete, they always want to end it on their terms, and unfortunately, it doesn't always happen, and you have to end up living with it. But when you have that opportunity to end it on your terms, just like with the whole example with Daniel Bryan, he was never going to wrestle again, and then he never kept giving up on his dream. Now, he can end it any way he wants, Daniel Bryan, end his career. Same thing with Edge. He ended it. He had no choice but to retire, ended up being the world heavyweight champion, relinquished the belt. But now he has the opportunity that very few athletes have in their life to end it on their terms. And that's what I got out of the interview. He said it during the promo. And I'm excited because now it leaves so many dream scenarios that people will want to have. He said, hey, I'm a little bit older, I'm a little bit grayer, but that doesn't take away from the psychology and the storyline and the experience a guy like Edge brings to the table. So really excited to what the future holds for him. I thought it was going to be a one-off. I heard he signed a 3-year deal.
Yeah. And for Edge to be back is a boost for the entire roster. Mm-hmm. And, man, when you got WrestleMania where Edge is going to come back, when you've got maybe Brock Lesnar taking on Drew McIntyre, and you might have Randy Orton versus Edge. Okay, we're on a good start here for WrestleMania.
And have we heard rumors now that they're really pushing on Sting to have some TV time? Could there be a possibility, Jeff, in your mind that
I
Sting
can never say never now?
No, you can't.
Nothing is impossible.
Also, the door is open. People have been talking about Paige as well. Can Paige possibly come back?
I don't know about that. I mean, but again, though, I can't say no.
Yeah, I can't say no.
I cannot say no. It's Paige because she's young. You could believe it.
Yeah, and then now these athletes are dealing with these types of injuries, like with the neck, for example. They're so for stem cell research and using stem cells.
Like for example, RVD, Kevin Nash. Yeah, they go to Colombia and they get stem cells and they get all that everything done that maybe is not approved here in the United States. But hey, I'm not against anything that can make you feel better.
Yeah,
why live your life in pain when you can if you need to heal it, go by all means, find any way possible to go about that. So again, it opens the door for a lot of things, and it's exciting because you think this is where WWE amps it up, right? It's hard to do it 365, 24/7, right? But you have that feeling that
God knows we try.
You have that feeling that they're going to, I know, right? Mm-hmm. That they're going to really amp it up now, and we have that incredible stuff going on, and then unfortunately news about Andrade getting suspended just when he's on the verge, to me, of being that franchise player that everyone thinks that Paul Heyman wants him to be. Something like this happens, and last night's injury angle kind of coincides with Andrade being suspended 30 days for the wellness policy. So I'm not even going to go into like what happened, whatever, how or when they knew, when they didn't. But again, this is kind of like another speed bump for Andrade, just when you think that he's on that verge of cementing himself as that Latino superstar in WWE.
You're being nice, dude. You're talking about speed bump. I think it's a huge step back right now. I mean, granted, even before, and again, I'm not going to say that it's because his relationship with Charlotte that why he's getting the attention he's getting, because I feel his work in the ring is showcasing the fact he deserves that push and deserves that spotlight being the United States champion. But I just feel because it's such an uphill battle for him, coming, dealing with the ups and downs he was dealing with in NXT, and finally coming from NXT to main roster, and then again going back into purgatory for whatever reason, now finally getting out of it. I think this is just a deeper hole now that when he does come back, you hope that when he does come back after the suspension, he goes and picks up right where he left off. But very few times, Jeff, does that happen. So huge step back for Andrade. I hope that's not the case. I hope, like you're right, I hope it's a small little speed bump. But we know when it comes to publicity and how WWE wants to be looked at as a public company, this does not look good from a company standpoint, how you're viewed. And you really want to nip this in the butt. We both know with Vince, he wants to make examples out of people that do these types of things. So granted, Andrade is no Roman Reigns. So you like to see, all right, if Roman didn't get punished, now Andrade, who's not at that level in terms of popularity, I think in the ring, Andrade is one of the top performers out there. Will he be garnered that punishment that should have been given, besides the fact that it was Roman Reigns? You know what I mean? That's the viewpoint I'm getting.
Yeah, so again, Edge has returned. Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. Randy Orton could be possibly an opponent for Edge. We don't know yet because you got something called Super Showdown, which happens on the 27th of February.
Something called Super Showdown.
Yeah, in Saudi Arabia, some show, whatever like that they're having. So that is also down the road too. So, man, I'm excited about just the way it started, and you know that WWE is going to amp things up, Trendsetter. But I am so excited because we got Chris Van Vliet with us on the show today. You can follow him on Twitter at Chris Van Vliet. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. Over 222,000 subscribers, 78 million views on his YouTube, and he's got interviews with wrestlers, entertainers, but
currently he's had the interviews with Kurt Angle, David Benoit, Vampiro, Lillian Garcia, Alex Riley. The list goes on and on in terms of who he's had on the show this year, and just keeps getting bigger and bigger, that list. So yeah, great get for us and a great chance to get an opportunity to speak to him and collectively have a round table of just guys talking wrestling.
Yeah, that's what it was, man. And, Chris is very knowledgeable. And, of course, you can tell by his interviews that he's good at what he does. So
very passionate about what he does.
Yeah, and really very talented. So without further ado, Chris Van Vliet from the Chris Van Vliet Show joins us on the Highest Spot podcast right now. Trendsetter and Chris, this is a crazy story, right? So me and Bryan are at Double or Nothing, and we're at StarCast events, and all of a sudden I looked to my corner, and then I for some reason I was just I had to do a double take, and then I kind of nudge Bryan, and I go, Bryan, do you know who that looks like? And he literally goes to me, Bryan, and he goes, oh my God, and is that Chris Benoit's son? That's how much they look alike. And when you were doing that interview, Chris, did you kind of get that sense, that kind of maybe the hairs on your arms were whoa, he looks so much like Chris Benoit, his son David, when you're doing the interview?
From the second you look at him, you look into his eyes and you're you see the resemblance. Obviously, he doesn't look exactly like his father, but the lineage is there. He's just a much taller version of Chris Benoit, but the resemblance is absolutely uncanny.
Yeah, and you had a chance to talk to him on one of your many interviews that you do on your YouTube channel, Chris Van Vliet Show. And
definitely like and subscribe, guys.
Yeah, very successful YouTube channel, by the way. Chris, he's very soft spoken. What were the first impressions that you got?
Yeah, what was so crazy about the whole thing is we've been following each other on Instagram for at least 6 months. And he just reached out one day and said, hey, man, I'm a big fan of your interviews. We should do one time. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. I think that people would love to hear your story. And I said, you let me know. I'll come to wherever you are. And he lives in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I said, I'll fly up there. And he goes, no, I visit the U.S. every once in a while. I'll be in Vegas, in the next few months. I said, great. Next time you're in Vegas, let's make it happen. So I flew to Las Vegas to meet up with him. And what was cool about this interview is usually I do my interviews where meet up with a person, shake hands with them, set up the cameras, boom, you're doing the interview. Here, I flew in. We were doing the interview on a Friday morning. I flew in on the Thursday night. And I reached out to him and said, hey, man, I just landed. Do you have any plans? And he was hanging out with one of his buddies in Las Vegas. He said, no, we don't have any plans tonight. I said, well, let's go grab a drink. So we were able to break the ice and actually just hang out, me and David and his buddy, and just kind of hang out and kind of just talk about everything. And it was during that night, he goes, nothing's off limits. I'm like, nothing at all? He's like, nothing at all. Nothing at all, bro. You can ask whatever you want. I'm like, okay. And the fact that we were able to have that moment where, the ice was kind of broken, and he obviously, had built this trust up in me, I think that it made the interview go that much better. And as you can see in the interview, obviously he's not media trained. He's not, he's not used to being in front of the camera. Yeah, he's a bit soft-spoken. He's maybe a little bit introverted, but this is the first time he told his story since it happened. I'm sure he's talked about it with his family members, but this is the first time he's spoken publicly about this in 13 years. And I can't even imagine how difficult that was. He actually texted me the other day and he said, I'm so glad that I got that off my chest. It's like a big weight that I've been able to, get off of my shoulders. And I'm just glad that it's out there now. And I'm really excited to see what he does with the rest of 2020. He's been talking about getting in the ring, getting trained. So, yeah, I'm really excited for his future.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, I would be excited as well. But, despite the fact of, it being the first time that he had a chance to talk about the events that happened between his father in that horrific night. But ultimately, for me, what I got out of it was there was a great rapport between the two of you, so that must have been a great answer to the explanation of why there's so much good chemistry between the two of you. But what I got from it is the mere fact that he trusted you enough to do that. That says a lot about you, Chris. I mean, I'm not trying to pat your own back here, and I know you're a very humble guy, but my goodness, that must say a lot about someone to trust you enough to talk about something that's very personal to them.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It meant a lot to me because oftentimes I'm the one going out and seeking out these interviews and, basically trying to sell myself to whomever it is to say, hey, do you want to do an interview with me? I've had guests on, like The Rock's been on my show. Like, if The Rock's been on, maybe you can be on. And usually, I either get no answer or someone's like, yeah, I guess we could do that. But the fact that he reached out to me, it meant a lot to me. And it made me, it meant a lot to me that he was not only familiar with my stuff, but you're right, that he trusted me enough to tell the story and tell it in the way that he wanted to be told. And it was a heartbreaking conversation at times, and it was a heartwarming conversation at times. And I didn't have a ton planned. I had a few different topics that I wanted to discuss, but I didn't really plan out how I was going to ask the questions. I didn't really plan out the order of how I was going to ask the questions. I just wanted to have a genuine conversation with someone who I now consider to be my friend.
Chris, the funny thing is that we were at Double or Nothing, and watching this interview, we were like, okay, this guy he's chill, because we didn't know if he wanted to be bothered, because he was kind of like incognito at the event. He was like, he was making the rounds and everything like that.
And you can only imagine how many times he gets bombarded with, you look like your father,
or
and them asking
Chris Benoit's son, right? And so we didn't know how to say hi, but that interview kind of made me like, all right, cool, next time now I know how to say what's up and everything like that, because I really didn't want to bother him. And then we saw him go, what the crazy thing was? We were at Double or Nothing and at StarCast, and he's going up to Stevie Ray, and Stevie Ray had this shook look on himself, saying, you're Chris Benoit's son?
Somebody actually had to go up to Stevie Ray and tell him, this is Chris Benoit's son, right? And Stevie took a double look at him like, oh my God, you look so much like him.
I mean, that it's crazy though. But your interview kind of helped break the ice to the entire wrestling fans in the world, and be like, okay, because you really, how do you approach somebody that you don't know like that, and you're like, oh, you're Chris Benoit's son. You don't know how they're gonna react,
Well, here's the thing. He's a fan just like the rest of us. In fact, he might be, even a bigger fan than the rest of us. Like, he eats and sleeps and breathes pro wrestling. And I don't think that David really realizes just how famous he now is because of who his father is. So he's extremely approachable. If you want to talk wrestling with him, he'll talk your ear off all night because he loves it that much, which is so great. So I think the cool thing about this interview is, number one, it made people realize who David Benoit was. And I think that a lot of people didn't realize that Chris Benoit had two other kids, David Benoit and his daughter, from a previous marriage. So I think, number one, it was like, okay, he didn't kill all of his remaining family members on that night. So I think that was number one, because there's a lot of comments on my video, people being like, oh, I didn't even know he had another son. This was great. And then I think number two, we realized he's just a down-to-earth, easygoing, soft-spoken guy who just loves wrestling like the rest of us.
Yeah, before the next topic, too, there's a picture out of him with Brian Pillman Jr. that they took together that day.
Yeah.
And, man.
How eerie was that?
I was like, oh, my God. I was like, it's crazy.
It's like the Four Horsemen Reunite version 2, basically.
It was eerie, but I'm glad that now we know if we ever see him, in one of these events that we can approach him, and that's great. And he does have a bright future, I think. Whatever happens, whether he decides to go with Chris Benoit Jr. like he told you, and we'll see what happens. But who can say no to him? Who's going to say no to him, and who has the right to say no if he wants to live out his dream of being a professional wrestler?
Well, that's the thing. I think that unfortunately, there is a camp of people that are going to write him off and say, you don't deserve to be in this business because of what your father did on the final weekend of his life. And sure, if that's what you want to believe, you're completely entitled to believe that. But I think that he now has the opportunity to rewrite the legacy of his father and of the Benoit name. And I'm a firm believer that anyone has the ability to do anything. And I think that if he puts the time in and gets trained by, a great school, obviously, if he gets in the gym and puts some math on, he has the potential to be a huge star. I just hope that he's willing to put in that work, because wrestling training is not an easy thing. I mean, if everyone could do it, we'd all be pro wrestlers. And that's why, some of us just talk about wrestling, because it's not the easiest thing to do.
Well, you did live training yourself, though, Chris, with John Morrison, remember?
Yeah. So, my story in a nutshell is I wanted to be a pro wrestler. It was my dream to be in the WWF at the time, and I was a backyard wrestler. And when I was 20 years old, I went and trained. I trained in Toronto for a few months in the summer of in between my years of college, and it's a lot of work. It is extremely painful. Everyone knows this. But yeah, I basically came to a crossroads where I had to decide, do I want to continue with wrestling school or do I want to continue with school? And it was like I had to do one or the other, because both of them require a mega commitment. And I just figured I should probably get my communications degree and probably, chase after this broadcasting thing, which worked out great because now I get to do a little bit of both.
Yeah, I was about to say, you made the right choice.
You get to mix both passions too, and not only that, but you're going in the entertainment world to talking to Hollywood celebrities. So I think you kind of made the right choice there, Chris.
Yeah, maybe. And my knees, I still have my knees, and my back doesn't hurt, so that's good too.
Now let's be honest too, Chris. You don't hit your prime until you're 40, so you're still almost there.
Now you can.
Wow.
Yeah. Now you can. Yeah. Chris, you I would say we all try to get our names out there, right? It's all about making your brand and making a name for yourself. And I would say you're a DIY guy because you traveled for these interviews. Your airfare or whatever. I mean, you've done this. You've taken it from the ground up. Would you consider yourself a DIY guy?
Oh, 1,000%. I think that anybody who has a podcast like yourselves, you're a DIY person. And I think it was just embedded in me early on that, I have a background in broadcasting and in journalism, and I've been involved in television for 15 years of my career. And I think I just had this embedded early on that the opportunities are out there, and it's just a matter of you going and chasing them down. So if someone says, hey, I'll do an interview with you, and they happen to live a 5-hour drive away or an 8-hour drive away like I did this past weekend, you do it, and if it costs you a little bit of money, but in the end you get that opportunity, I think that well outweighs it. And I think that there needs to be more people that think about that in all aspects of life. Like, oh, the opportunity's there, boom, great. I'm going to take that opportunity and run with it.
Yeah, I mean, true words were never spoke when Chris is saying this, guys. I can imagine, too, that we're doing the same thing in terms of going to every independent promotion we can locally and also traveling distances that we're not getting paid for. We're doing it out of our own pocket for the mere experience and opportunity, like Chris said. Chris, I also listen to a lot of all other interviews. It's not just about wrestling, too, but it's just a variety of stuff in terms of the field of entertainment, though. Talk about your style for a little bit, because everybody likes to have a particular style or try to I wouldn't say try to copy, but initially when you first start off, you kind of want to portray a certain character, a certain appeal from what you've seen in the past, and then you garner your own type of personality. But it really seems like when you spoke about before, you're really basically trying to make it into a conversation, which in my opinion, those are the best podcasts. I really feel like what we're doing right now, you and I talking with Jeff, it's really just that general conversation feeling that you don't see a lot of days in most interviews, because it seems like in most interviews I see, everybody's trying to hit bullet points, and it's always the same question over and over again. Do you try to make a huge, I'm not saying do you try, but you make a huge conscious effort, don't you, to not ask the same questions over and over?
Yeah, and I think that too many people think of interviews as interviews and not as conversations. Like if all three of us went out to dinner tonight, we wouldn't like be 20 minutes in going, well, we don't have anything left to talk about. You just, you find the time to...
Yeah, I'll excuse myself to the bathroom and skip on the bill.
But, I think that too many people think of them as interviews rather than thinking of them as two people that are sharing a conversation. And I think that one of the mistakes that people make early on is question, and then you wait for the answer. And then while they're answering, instead of listening to what they're saying, you're already looking ahead to what your next question is going to be. And I think that you need to be present in that moment. And I think that's just good life advice, to be present in the moment and to be aware of what's going on. But to be a great interviewer, you got to listen. And I've made it, especially when I do these longer interviews. My interviews are now 40 plus minutes. I just kind of go in with a general idea of like, okay, I think we should touch on this subject. Or, I think it'd be interesting to find out more about this. And I don't really word out exactly how I'm going to say it. I just kind of know, I want to approach that. And I don't go, that's going to be my second question. I just go, at some point during this conversation, I'll bring that up and we'll kind of see where it fits in. And like I said, it'd be the same as if, we went to a dinner tonight or you went to a party tonight. You would just continue the conversation with the person that you're, speaking with. You wouldn't be like, okay, now when they're done this, I got to ask them this thing. And I just think that that's a big thing to just take into account is just listen, be an active listener and follow the conversation wherever it goes.
Well, I'm hungry, Jeff. All right, we're at the dinner, Chris. What are you ordering right now?
Chicken wings for sure.
Oh, my God.
I'm ordering.
I'm ordering buffalo wings. What about you, Jeff?
I'm the wing guy, too, so I would definitely order wings. I'm not
wings all around, then.
Wings all around for the table, Chris.
Drink of choice, Chris.
And and you can tell that your guests are very comfortable. Sometimes I bet you're aiming for maybe like 30 minutes, and it ends up being an hour or so. And I think that's a positive on you that they're that comfortable that they can just end up talking like they're talking to like a buddy or a friend and stuff. So you talked to Nick Aldis, actually. You were at the at NWA Hard Times, right?
Yeah. So I was in Atlanta this past weekend for Hard Times, and then I stayed for the Power tapings as well. And let me tell you, NWA has something very special going on with that studio feel, the studio wrestling, and it's like the old school meets new school, and it got something really special there.
And one thing that I learned about Nick Aldis in your interview is, again, he carries that title. To me, he kind of makes that title. You know how, like, the title doesn't make you make the title, right? To me, he makes that title. He adds that validity to it, the way he holds it, carries it, like it's, his prized possession, right? And just the way he talked about, taking a chance. Cody's taking a chance with AEW. He took a chance by leaving WWE. Nick Aldis, took a chance after he left TNA. And, a very big chance with NWA because it was just basically Billy Corgan, Dave Lagana, and Tim Storm. And look what's happened now in less than 2 years.
Well, I think he saw the vision. Dave Lagana, he's a brilliant wrestling mind, and obviously Billy Corgan is a huge wrestling fan and a great businessman. So I think that he saw the vision that those two guys had, and he was in this weird limbo of his career. Like, he was the world champion. He talks about this in my interview, which is so wild. He was the world champion in TNA and was already talking while he was the champion about, when this contract's up, I'm out of here. Like, he was so unhappy in TNA, and he was going to be okay with just working the indies and just trying to figure some stuff out. I mean, I think he worked a few Ring of Honor dates, but he was happier doing his own thing than being unhappy in TNA. And I think that when he was approached with this idea of NWA, he was just like, yeah, let's do this. Because you look at Nick Aldis, and he has it all. He has a great look. He's incredible in the ring. And his heel work right now in NWA is very, very good. And it just seems strange that he wasn't being picked up by anyone else. So I think that he saw this opportunity and went, man, I'm going to take this ball and I'm going to run with it. And now he's been the champ for over a year, 400 and something days now.
Yeah, and you were talking about All In being very important for them to get the that title, the NWA title, on the platform like that. And I think that once that happened, the ball got rolling and all this started to happen. So that was very important for that match of Nick Aldis and Cody at All In. And I think after that, it just boomed. But talk about the experience, like you said, like that TV set. You go back to the NWA days in the 80s where you had that studio feel, and a huge killer premiere episode that we witnessed this week. And, you know, Marty Scurll being a part of it, and it just keeps growing and growing, right?
Yeah, and it's just such a cool thing because you walk into the Georgia Public Broadcasting building, and it's just, you know, it seems like a normal office building like anything else, and you open up a door, and the studio's just boom, right there. All the seats, and the ring is down there at the bottom, and you've got the entire NWA Power set there. And I love what they're doing here because it's different. Because if they just did a wrestling show with a smaller audience, it would just look like WWE Light. And that's actually, I'm borrowing a phrase from Billy Corgan, who said that. It would just be compared to WWE. And I think that for a long time, TNA was just referred to as WWE Light. So the fact that they're doing something completely different makes them stand out. And I think that that's why they've been so successful. And I mean, I've been saying this for the last year, but what an exciting time to be a pro wrestling fan, because we have so many options. And it's great that throughout the week, like Monday Night Raw obviously looks the way it does. Tuesday, Power looks the way it does. Then Wednesday, AEW looks, you know, completely different. And NXT looks completely different. And I love that there's something for everyone right now, or you can have all those things if you want to.
Yeah, that's something I continually always tell Jeff that.
Here's his reference here, Chris. Check this out. Check out this reference.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
Now Jeff's gonna, he's putting me on the spot here. It works though, Jeff. It works because it's like Baskin Robbins, right? You have to try all 31 flavors now instead of vanilla, chocolate, and the basics. Now you have 31 other, or in this case, 32 other flavors to choose from. So it's like Baskin Robbins, isn't it? You have so many flavors now. Nowadays, it's a great time to be a fan.
It. Well, I like it, but at the same time, if we went into Baskin Robbins and you got, you know, mint chocolate chip and I got Rocky Road, I wouldn't be like, oh, you got mint chocolate chip? You know, that flavor sucks, man. Rocky Road's the best flavor. But for some reason, people do that in wrestling. Like, I don't know why you can't like AEW and also WWE and also Ring of Honor and also NWA. I don't know why people think it's either or.
You know, Chris, it's funny. Like, you know, I know they had the Monday Night Wars back then, and you feel, and you think there needs to be like that, you know, WCW versus WWE kind of feel, that mentality. Mm-hmm. But it's just weird that now where like everything's available, I can watch, you know, Dynamite on Wednesday and then, you know, record NXT and watch that again. It's not like we're against anything, but it's weird, that mentality, right? I'm confused about that as well.
Yeah, and I just think that it's just inherent in wrestling. I mean, we're watching competitiveness on the screen, so I guess the fans, you know, choose to be competitive as well. But you're right, you know, and the great thing is you don't need to watch these shows live, because that's the era that we live in now. You can either watch them on Hulu or you can watch them on your DVR, or I think a lot of people are just watching clips now on YouTube or on social media.
Chris, isn't it amazing with all the outlets we have now to watch wrestling, whether you've mentioned before, it's WWE and New Japan, Impact, Ring of Honor, the list goes on MLW. Do you ever get exhausted? Is it just too much sometimes? Do you think we're just oversaturated now with wrestling?
I think there is a lot, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I just think that, once again, it's providing a lot of choice. But, I mean, there's wrestling on 5 nights a week. I don't know anyone who has a family or a job or, you know, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, who has the time to watch 3 hours of Raw on Monday, then however long Power is going to be on Tuesday, 2 hours of whatever you want to choose, AEW or NXT on Wednesday. I think WoW is on Thursday, and then you got SmackDown on Friday. Like, who has that kind of time? So I think that it's great that you can kind of pick from the wrestling buffet, if you will. Every time you go to the buffet, maybe I don't want salad this time. Maybe I want some, maybe I'm going to go to the carving station. Who doesn't love the carving station? And I think that you can, just pick and choose. And I think that that's what's great about it.
At the end of this interview, Chris, I'm going to be going.
I think he's taking my ice cream analogy to the next level now.
Well, now, everything's food related now. I mean, that's what we've done. Like we've carving stations, buffet stations, like
We're talking about chicken wings.
Chicken wings. Man, I'm going on a food binge once this interview's done, Chris, and that's not good for me.
Gain 10 pounds and blame you.
If anything, it'll make our listeners hungry after this interview, so that's a good thing too. Chris, you talk about saturation, right? WrestleMania weekend. I took someone actually had enough time, a nice fan or some had to put it on Excel and put out everything that's available on WrestleMania weekend. And like you said, good Lord, I mean, some people aren't going to sleep.
Yeah, but this is a relatively new thing. I think that this was maybe 5-ish years ago, and I've been to the last 8 WrestleManias. And I think it was 32 where 32 or 31. Mm-hmm. 31, I think, when things really started to change, where it was like, oh, there's this convention, and then they've got a couple shows. And I think WrestleCon was really what started to get the ball rolling with that. But I think it was also NXT started running shows, then. And it was like, oh, okay, well, you're here for WrestleMania weekend. Why wouldn't you want to go to another show? You can go to NXT. Okay, great. And then I think everyone just started building around that. I mean, I honestly don't know how these promoters do it, and my hat is off to them because there's only so many venues in a city, and there's only so many time slots within that venue. I think the second that WrestleMania is announced in whatever city, like those promoters must be on the phone like within the next minute, being like, okay, we need to find a venue to run a show, because with the amount of shows that are being run, those venues must be sold out like almost instantly. So my hat's off to them for somehow organizing all of this and giving us options. I mean, if you are a wrestling fan, just go to WrestleMania weekend. You don't even need to go to WrestleMania anymore. That's the craziest thing about it.
Yeah, true.
You can go to the city, and I certainly saw this in New Orleans. A lot of people just go to the city, party it up. It's a big wrestling weekend or week for a lot of people. Go to the shows you want to go to, maybe go to a convention day or two. And I think a lot of people fly home on Sunday, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, and it might end up being a bit lighter on your pocket too than paying for Mania and stuff like that, and you get your wrestling fix.
Well, especially it's easier than sitting in the same chair for 7 straight hours for a WrestleMania show. That's pretty tough to begin with anyway.
Oh, that's cool though, Chris. You've been there for like 8 WrestleManias already. But I think me and Bryan, from 29 on, we've been to every Wrestlemania. It's crazy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Nice.
Well,
we're pretty much in the same. Yeah, we're
pretty
much
much for us at 36.
So yeah. We've been there like pretty much the same amount then.
Yeah, we were at 29, and then, man, you know what they do? At WrestleMania, they hit you with the promo for the next year's one, and you get on an emotional high, and we look at each other, and we're like, hell yeah, we're going,
And then maybe Jeff says that. I'm like, damn it, we got to go to another one. Oh, man.
And when they said New Orleans was the next one, I was like, okay, who says no to New Orleans?
Well, for 30, of course, you have to go for 30.
Yeah, and that was a great one. We'll talk about your WrestleMania memories, though. Like you were a fan, right? You went to wrestling school.
He still is a fan.
He's still a fan. You went to wrestling school. When did it start for you? What exact moment was it that made you a fan?
I remember watching at my grandfather's house when I was really young, like 5, 6 years old, and he'd have it on Saturday nights when we would go visit him. And that was just it. That was my first exposure to it. I just remember being blown away by the larger-than-life characters, and this would be like the late '80s. So that was the golden age. Macho Man and Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior, and I just remember like being drawn in by it. But it wasn't until the Attitude Era. And really like Vince McMahon and Stone Cold feud that really drew me in. And from that point on, I was just obsessed with it. Like bad. Raw would play Monday night, and I lived in Toronto. Raw would play on Monday night and then repeat again Tuesday afternoon. I would watch both of them, and I would tape it and then like watch it even later on in the week. I watched everything. I'm like, of course I watched Raw and I watched Thunder and I watched a little bit of Nitro, but I also watched ECW on Friday nights. I'd watched Jacked and Metal and Shotgun. Like, I loved it. And I was on the wrestling team at my high school. And when you're on the wrestling team, you're told, like, oh, you can't like that pro wrestling stuff. It's fake. What we do in here is real. And I remember being in matches when I was in 12th grade and, like, trying to give guys, like, pro wrestling moves because I was so obsessed with it. It was ridiculous. And then that was also the same year that I got into backyard wrestling. And I was just like, I'm obsessed with this. I love it. And I want to do this for a living one day. So that was it for me. It was 16, 17 years old. And then when I was 18 years old, I went to my first WrestleMania. It was in Toronto with the greatest match of all time, The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. I get all the feels when I think about that match because, oh my God, it was, there's just so much incredible emotion in that building for that match.
And we got goosebumps watching it on television. I can only imagine you're there in the arena. That must have been an electric atmosphere, no pun intended, about The Rock.
It for sure was, because Rock was supposed to be the good guy. Hogan was with the NWO. He was supposed to be the bad guy. And
the fans changed it. The fans turned it around, right? The fans decided that we're going to cheer for Hogan no matter what because it's Hulk Hogan, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny. There was this little kid sitting next to me. I had pretty great seats. I had floor seats. I was in like the 20th row or something. I still have my tickets up. It only cost $126 to sit in the 20th row back then. Yeah, crazy.
Oh, man.
That'd be like a $750 ticket now.
Yeah.
So there was this kid next to me, and we're all cheering for Hogan. And this kid's like telling me how great The Rock is. I'm like, look, I know The Rock's good, but this is Hulk Hogan. And I remember...
Yeah, I'm sure that's what you said, Chris. I'd have been like, shut up, kid. I'm over Hulk Hogan. I doubt you said it as nicely as you just described it. I'd be like, shut up, kid. We're cheering for the Hogan right now. If not, get out of here.
I remember telling The Rock, I'm like, I was there, WrestleMania 18, my favorite match of all time. He goes, oh, yeah? Who are you cheering for? I said, well... So I was cheering for Hogan. He's like, yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's amazing. And
isn't that crazy? He's talking to The Rock. He's like, who'd you cheer for?
Yeah.
Like, it's all crazy.
Chris is name dropping now.
I'm talking to The Rock. Look, in the whole conversation now we were having, I was just thinking about Chris's coach saying, hey, man, Vliet, we don't do the figure four here, on his wrestling team,
Or the people's elbow.
Yeah, we don't do that here,
Well, Chris, I want to ask you real quick too. I mean, you were talking about it. Jeff had brought up the question. You're discussing like how you fell in love with it, right? At what point in your life did you start seeing it from the different perspective, like how we do now, and yourself covering it? Like we know the outcomes are now predetermined. We know it's a storyline based, but we still love and appreciate the artistry and the psychology behind it. When did you start looking at it from that perspective?
I think when I first started even thinking about going to wrestling school. So when I was 16 and 17 years old, and I was really getting into just how everything unfolded and how everything worked, that's when I started looking at it from a different point of view. And it's just, it's so easy as a wrestling fan to think you know how it works and to think you're on the inside. We have no idea. We have no idea how this stuff actually works without actually being in there and doing it. So I think that I thought I knew how it was done. And when I went to wrestling school, I certainly realized I was doing a lot of things wrong and had a lot of the idea behind it wrong. And then when I started learning in wrestling school about the psychology about it and the psychology of, what makes a match great, I also realized that I had no idea. And now I try to step back and go, okay, I kind of understand where things are going here, but I don't know what these people know. I'll leave it in their much more capable hands than mine.
Jeff, that's what they say true wisdom is, admitting you don't know anything to begin with. And Chris is, right there on the term that, he thought he knew, but he had absolutely no idea. I completely agree with you there, Chris. One more thing, too, is that talking about how your perspective changed from that point on. Also, is it still possible? Because Jeff and I, and with yourself, we sometimes dissect things. We try to break things down from a psychology standpoint, from a storyline standpoint. Do you allow yourself to still enjoy it as a fan, as that kid that saw The Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania?
Yeah, yes and no, I think, is the right way to answer that, because I still want wrestling to make sense. Like, I still want it to be logical. And I got to tell you, when I watched Raw and Edge gave this amazing promo and then Randy Orton came out and turned on him, I thought, in a normal world, like if they want this to be believable, they want us to buy into this, how is no one coming out to save Edge? That segment was great and full of emotion. I completely give them that. But Edge just returned 24 hours ago. He's beloved by everyone. And no one came out, not even his wife came out to save him. Like, I just think that in those moments, I kind of feel like we're being insulted as fans. And I know we're supposed to suspend disbelief, but in those moments, I'm just like, yeah, you know what? That doesn't quite add up for me. So I just have some of those moments where it's like, just don't treat us like we're dumb. And I just think that those are the moments that are hard for me.
Yeah, I did see your tweet there, like, who's there? And then once they're carrying them, when they're carting them off, and then you see R-Truth, and then you see, Zack Ryder and Hawkins, and,
where were you 15 minutes
like,
ago?
Where were you, like, it's right, but as far as the storyline-wise and the feud heading into WrestleMania, that's interesting. It's a good way to go. Randy Orton is a much better heel than he is face, though. So, yeah, that's the thing, too. Like, I knew somebody that watched wrestling as just wrestling, and then when I said, well, they should be pushing this guy instead of that guy, you're like, oh, it makes... Then they saw it that light, and they're like, dude, man, I can't watch it now the way I used to because, you're making sense. And so kind of that, like, nativity that we have kind of gets lost once we grow up and we start actually working in this field and trying to cover it, right?
Yeah, and I think that, we have to take everything in the wrestling world with a grain of salt. I think that we all know that. And I also have to commend the people that write these shows, because to write a wrestling show every single week, 52 weeks a year, and Raw's been on for 20 years, that takes a lot of work. And I know a lot of changes are happening on the fly and at the last minute, and the fact that everyone can adapt and put a show on TV that looks great from a production standpoint every single week, I think that is not appreciated enough. I think that too many wrestling fans are looking for what's wrong. And what's wrong is always going to be available in whatever TV program that you choose to watch. And I think that we forget that wrestling is a television program, and I think that what's right is also always available too. So I think that I'd rather be the person who's looking for the good stuff that's happening and kind of take the bad stuff with a grain of salt and go, you know what, I see what they tried there, and maybe they can work on that, and I'm sure that they will.
No, yeah, I see that point too, and talking about it too. I mean, the way I would describe wrestling is a long, or however long the event is, a gigantic variety show. You have so many different type of elements that occur, not just strict wrestling, which the purists might love, and you have a little comedy, you have a little drama, a little sadness, all that stuff combined together.
Romance.
Like, a little romance. Yeah. Watch a good movie. But with that being said, something I look at it, and especially with the WWE product nowadays, and this is why we've always talked about now how it's so great to have so many other alternatives to choose from if you're not a huge fan of what WWE is producing right now from a storyline standpoint. I just feel like nowadays, and maybe this is me dating myself now, because during the Attitude Era or during the past, it just seems everything is more scripted now in WWE, where potential talent to have that ability or might have that potential it factor, you never know until you actually let them go, that don't have that freedom to really pick and choose, or in this case fail, as opposed to back, you look at AEW, you look at Ring of Honor, they're going out there to to sell a point, and it's up to them to figure out how to do it. Do you feel it's a little bit too scripted nowadays?
I think that WWE is definitely very scripted, and that's just been their style. And I think that AEW is working for the AEW audience because it does exactly the opposite of that. And I was blown away when I spoke to Chris Jericho at Fyter Fest, and he said that the promo he cut that night was the first unscripted promo that he had cut in like 20 years. And I was like, wow. Like, I think that they basically said, go out there and hit on this point and this point, and that's that. Whereas I think in WWE, like, they hand you an actual script, like word for word, actual script, and say, here's your promo. You better go memorize this. And I think that when I spoke with John Cena, he basically said, you need to understand that those are the parameters, and you just got to work within those parameters. You got to take what they give you and work within it and try to make it better. And I think that takes a real talent to do. And I think that some people are better with lots of guidance, and I think that some people, might work better in that other format where it's unscripted and you're able to just kind of do your own thing.
Yeah, but don't you find it kind of ironic, though, in the sense that a guy like John Cena saying those are the parameters, you must follow them, and do your best you can with them. I completely agree. I completely agree with John says, and I get your point, too. But it's, for me, not because it's John Cena, but when you've kind of been successful enough and you've made it, and you showcase that you can go off script and be fine, it's a little bit probably easier for you to go off script or to go turn that left when you should make that right, because it just felt that way. I suppose now you're conditioning people, whether they're coming from the Performance Center into the WWE main roster, you're conditioning them now that you memorize this, and if you go offline, if you go off point at any particular moment, you're going to be punished for it. Do you get that feeling, though?
Well, I think that everybody knows what they're getting themselves into when they sign a WWE contract. And I don't think that it should come as any surprise. You spend a whole bunch of time in the PC, the Performance Center, where you're basically learning the rules of the road. And I don't think that anything's going to change when you get called up to be an NXT or Raw or SmackDown. So I think that when you go in, you know what to expect. I don't know why you could possibly think that you could buck the system.
Talking to Chris Van Vliet here, and again, we thank you for your time, Chris. I'm looking at the list of people that you've talked to, and it's just only we're closing in on January. We're ending the month. You talked to Kurt Angle. We just finished talking about your interview with David Benoit, Vampiro, Alex Riley, Lillian Garcia, Nick Aldis, and the list goes on and on.
I loved the Vampiro interview.
Oh, well, of course, because he got he out of the blue, Vampiro compliments him, and when you hear,
and it takes Chris aback too. Chris, you're taking aback how Vampiro just is putting you over so well.
So when you hear that, does it feel like, because you probably maybe don't have time to to reflect on stuff because you're moving a lot, and maybe somewhere down the road you'll appreciate you'll sit back and appreciate where you've come from. But when you hear that stuff, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, it's not lost on me that this is really cool, and I've had the moments where I've been able to sit back and realize just how fortunate I am to be able to do this, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk to the people that I looked up to when I was a kid, and now I'm able to share conversations with them as a peer. And that blows my mind. But what blows my mind even more than that is that other people enjoy this. And when I look at the views on some of these videos and I look at the subscriber count continuing to rise, I'm just overwhelmed with greatness, or with gratefulness that other people enjoy.
We know you're overwhelmed with greatness, Chris. I mean, obviously you've got over 222,000 subscribers on your YouTube, so you are full of greatness. But you're not a humble guy. You're telling it like it is. You're great.
Wait, Chris is start talking in the third person.
I'm super grateful.
Yeah. So, has there ever been an interview? Because maybe when you started out, that you're like, oh God, that was brutal. And has there been a favorite one of yours out of the many interviews that you've done?
My favorite interview is for sure anytime I get to talk to The Rock. He meant so much to me when I was growing up, and I dressed up as The Rock for Halloween. I would walk down the halls of my high school telling people it doesn't matter, whatever they would ask, whenever I would ask them a question. So The Rock, and he's the best. The Rock is incredibly charismatic, and he has this movie star quality about him where he makes you feel special, even though it's obvious that he's the megastar. Worst interview? Probably the one with MJF. Because anyone's seen that.
Yeah.
Wait, that guy is such a sweetheart.
You gotta do respect though that he's always on. You know what I mean? Because we were at Podcast Row for All In, and he graced us with his presence for about 10 minutes. And at the end of the day, you're like, what a jerk! But he lives the life well, right? He does it right.
Yeah. That's who he is. I think that right after that interview came out, people were like, well, what's MJF really like? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's he really like? Like, that's it. That's who he is. Max is Max. And it's out there. So, look, it's entertaining, and he's a great heel, but he's just not the best person to try to share a conversation with.
I never thought I would say this, honestly, on this podcast. We had him on our podcast as well, but I got to give a little 4-1. If Maxwell Jacob Freeman hates me for this, then at least he hates me for this. I don't care, but I can't believe I'm defending this guy because nobody defends him, right? But I have to because at All In, when we interviewed him, he walked off, and then we saw him at the after party, and I told him straight to his face, hey, I just wanted to tell you, I was like, that pop you got when you faced Matt Cross, when you first came out, and that huge crowd just roared your name, I was like, congratulations, man. That must have been a great feeling for you. And literally, he was not MJF. He, to a certain point, he was, but he was like, oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
You're breaking kayfabe.
I don't care. If I do and I am banned from MJF, then I am, but man, what a guy that, a story about him being so young, but yet acts so mature in terms of the psychology of wrestling is. I think he's only scratched the surface of how far he can go. I mean, he already has people wanting to kick his ass and throw stuff at him, so he must be doing something.
And that Cody feud that's going to evolve here, and that's student.
I think we all want Cody to kick his ass.
Student enrollment, student and the teacher. Yeah, that always works. If you do it right. Chris, are you still doing AEW? Are you still contributing?
Well, I'm ready and willing when they need me. I've worked a few dates with them on Dynamite, and it was such an honor to be part of the show. And I'm ready and willing when they need me. But I think that their broadcast seems pretty full. So I think that they have Jen Decker handling a lot of stuff with the backstage interviews. Obviously, Alex Marvez was moved from commentary to doing some interviews as well. So I'm ready and willing, and who knows? I mean, we're talking right now on a Tuesday night. Who knows? I might be in Cleveland tomorrow for AEW. I honestly don't know.
You live the life of a pro wrestler. You're literally living out of a suitcase, Chris. I love it. It's awesome.
Do you get the rest? Do you relate when you're traveling like this, and you're like, God, how did the wrestlers do this?
Oh God, I have no idea how they do it. Like, I fly a lot, like partly for I was hosting a TV show in Miami for the last 5 years. I recently just ended that job last year, but I think in 2018 I took 72 flights. Last year I took 55 or something. That is nothing. Like, I bet these wrestlers, especially the guys who are on the road every week, man, they're probably at 150 flights a year, 130 flights a year. Like, I have no idea.
And that's not including the miles on the road that they add in.
And then when we travel, Chris, me and Bryan, when we carry our wheel bags, we got to hum the Never Say Die
song
from
Being the Elite.
From Being the Elite. Because we've been but it just happens, just the influence of wrestling. Yeah, exactly. So
wrestling is everywhere.
I know. So
inspires us all. I don't know how the WWE guys do it though. Like their schedule is crazy. They'll fly into a town, get a rental car, drive from that town to the next town, then the next night after that, drive another 2 or 3 or 4 hours to the next town. Like, those loops are crazy. And I appreciate, from the outside looking in at least, that AEW is breaking that mold and going, we only need you for 1 date a week. You can fly in on Wednesday morning, show up to the arena, and we'll fly you back on Thursday. Like, I think that's I just appreciate that they're breaking that mold and the guys have the chance to be at home with, a lot of them have families, or a lot of them have wives or fiancés or husbands of fiancés. I appreciate that they can be home with their families.
I think that's the evolution nowadays in terms of you want to get on the road, you want to get your name across and commit to those dates and those commitments. But in terms of longevity-wise, you want your performers, you want your investments to last longer. You want them to be happy, and more importantly, you want them to be healthy, not just physically, but mentally as well.
Plus, the old school mentality is of the house shows being significant. I know you can work your stuff in rivalries, but to have as many house shows as they do, and you look at you don't like seeing people tweet out empty arenas, but what house shows to me don't have the significance that they had before. You know, because the revenue can't be that much as it was back then in the 80s and 90s when the wrestlers were going. That's how they're making their money. You know, to me it's an old school mentality of house shows.
It must still make money because WWE runs 2 live events every single week, and I think it's not just the ticket sales, but it's the merch. They make a ton of money on merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you guys know, you can't go to a wrestling show without wearing a wrestling shirt.
Yeah,
This is true.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of your. You've even come out and you've merchandised there, Chris, with your shirts. I like the one with the luchador mask on. That one's a good shirt. So
Nice.
we're all brands. We all try to market ourselves. So yeah, I see the point there where merchandise stuff would be key for them.
You know, Chris, you talked about with Jeff about your favorite interview you had is with The Rock. Most difficult ones were their MJF, of course, because his delightful personality. How could you not have a bad one with him, right? But for me, what have been the most entertaining ones? And I have to revert to a particular one that I just start laughing at. I mean, you're not just wrestling; you're entertainment of all sides. And interviewing Dakota Sky.
No, Dakota Johnson.
Sorry, Dakota Sky. I'm thinking of something completely different.
You're thinking Dakota Kai.
No, I said Dakota Sky. I just came from the AVN Awards, so I'm thinking of a completely different type of entertainment. Man, I got my Dakotas crossed. Oh my goodness, Dakota Johnson.
An interview with Dakota Sky would have been very interesting.
Oh yeah, especially the fact that Dakota Johnson and Leslie Mann, they're flirting with you a little bit. They kind of wanted you to show a little skin there. How uncomfortable was that when you were doing that?
Look, I went into that moment, and I just kind of wanted to run with it and see what I could get. So I walked into the interview room, and you got to understand, when people do these junket interviews, the celebrities are sitting in this room doing 40, 50 interviews in a day. Yeah. And you have 4 minutes with them, and as soon as your 4 minutes are done, someone else is going to come in, and they're going to do a 4-minute interview. So I'm walking into the room, and the reporter that's walking out of the room was basically like, good luck with them. Like, that's a tough interview. And I walked in, and just right off the bat, they were just being, a little flirtatious and just wanting to have fun. And I think that they were just looking for a way to kind of break up the monotony of their day.
I'm sorry, man, but Dakota Johnson, she was eyeing you, man. If you don't want to admit it, because I know you're humble, I'll say it from my point. She was looking at you, and she was not looking away, man.
Chris, I'm thinking 50 Shades when she's like flirting with you, dude. I'm like, dude, how are you keeping your composure? I give you credit though. You did keep your composure. You went along with it. I would have been like, So that shows you professionalism, Chris.
Look, I didn't know that it was going to turn into what it turned into, either in the moment or afterwards. I just thought, I knew Dakota Johnson had a really big fan base. And we're talking, man, this was 4 years ago. I think this was 3 or 4 years ago. So I knew she had a big fan base. I knew that if I posted an interview, I was still posting celebrity interviews on my YouTube channel at the time. I knew that if I posted this, her fans would eat it up because there was it was her a little bit different than what we had normally seen, because Dakota Johnson's interviews, for the most part, they're kind of one-dimensional. They're not that entertaining. So I knew that this was different. I didn't realize this was going to turn into this, bigger thing. And now, since the Me Too movement's happened, now you look at the comments on my video, and it's like, what if the roles are reversed? This would be sexual harassment. Look, it was a fun moment shared between 3 consenting adults. It was fun. It was a joke. And, what an interesting moment that ended up being talked about on the Today Show. We talked about on a bunch of different late-night shows. It was just a really interesting, fun moment.
It's free
publicity. A viral moment.
Oh, yeah, Chris, you got great exposure, figuratively and literally.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how many more buttons you would have gone there, Chris.
If you had an extra minute, would we get down to the navel?
Yeah. I think they wanted me to sit there shirtless during the interview. And
would you have done that?
So glad that didn't happen.
Okay.
I haven't done interviews shirtless, thank God.
Oh man, and then you know what? She must have realized it, because I think you interviewed her the next time, and she actually apologized to you. And it's weird though, because when you're a woman and a guy does that to you, it's uncomfortable. And listen, I'm a dude first and foremost,
you are?
and I'm digging that. I'm like, go, Chris, go, and you're like, you're playing along, you're not letting them whatever. But then at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, that was kind of like a little bit uncomfortable, because
but it's all
you
good
like
fun though.
You do get that feeling of a little bit like,
I think people take things way too seriously nowadays, Chris, where it's like, if something's supposed to be a funny segment and then people that, you're talking about the Me Too movement, like, oh, the roles are reversed. You guys are just taking this from a way, way harder perspective than it should be. It's just good old-fashioned fun that you just so happen to find yourself in that chair. And I'm surprised they put some music for you.
The reality of the situation is I was the one in control.
Mm-hmm.
I could have been like, calm it down, ladies. Let's get to the interview. But I was like, let's have some fun here. Let's see how far we can go. And I pushed the envelope a little bit, and then they decided to push that envelope even further. And I was like, great, let's roll with this. I could have been like, yeah, okay, all right, let's get down to business here. But I thought, let's just see what we can get.
And that's what makes great entertainment, Chris, and that we've talked about since the very beginning of this time chatting with you. It's that there's no format for stuff that's just a general feel and general mood. You went with it, you thought it was right, and that was it. It would have been different if you had said, hey, all right, ladies, listen, later. Let's do the interview now, a type of thing, and it would have ruined the mood.
But he adapted. He adapted to it. He went along with it. And God, look at that! He's on the Today Show. He he's getting publicity. That's what happens when you're a pro and you know how to just. There's some people that would have fallen flat on their face.
Yeah, and I just think that it's like we talked about. You just got to be present in the moment, not just in interviews, but just in life. Just be present in that moment and be willing to go for the ride.
Now, if Dakota Sky, the adult film star, had asked you to do that, it would have been completely different, right?
I would have been like, can we shut off the cameras, please? And can everyone vacate the room?
That's awesome.
That's so funny, too, because I'm like, Dakota Sky.
I know, and I didn't notice it until I said it. I was like, man, I got to get my head out of the adult film industry right now. Seriously, it's
Your Google search history must be fascinating.
Dude, I know these all people by first names. Here's a quick little side note, though, Chris. It's amazing how, like, you and, like, Jeff and I are working our way towards developing a name and brand. And it's so cool and rewarding when Jeff and I walk into an indie event or go to WrestleCon and fans know who we are to an extent. And then people we've interviewed in the past remember us and say, hey, Bryan, Jeff, great to see you guys again. That's a great rewarding feeling because you've earned that at least level of respect. For the adult film industry, dude, it's amazing. I've done it for 3 years where I've interviewed adult film actresses, men and women, and literally all the women and the guys, for a good portion, remember me and say, hey, Bryan, what's going on? How's everything? It must be like, again, what you feel like when, like, The Rock sees you or John Cena. Like, hey, it's a great feeling to feel like you gained that respect.
All right, so I'm going to name drop Chris. Ella Knox, right? You know who that is?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So of course. So I went there. I went there 2 years with Bryan to help him be the wingman, be the camera guy, right? Because DIY.
He was not a wingman.
And I didn't go this year. And guess what, Chris? She said, "Where's your friend? Where is your friend?"
Yes. She's like, "Where's your friend?" I was like, "Oh, that's my brother, actually. Yeah, he couldn't make it this year. He was disappointed because he really wanted to see you and say what's up." And I said, "He really likes you." And she said, like to me, "Oh, I know." And so she was nice enough. We made a video, a PG video. I have to correct myself there before I get in trouble with anybody. We made a short little video for Jeff, for her, saying that she wished he was there. And he has it now saved on his phone. We'll be watching it now till next year.
It's my screensaver. So.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, man, and you're going to be actually...
Wait, real quick. Who's your favorite? If you had a favorite, top 3 adult film performers, who are they? Because I want to know this, because next time, if I do get a chance to interview them, I want them to do a shout-out for you.
Jeez. I mean, they're all such, talented actresses.
There's so many talented actresses.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that everyone is a fan of Jenna Jameson.
Yes.
Even though she's not still doing her thing, but I think that everybody is a fan. She's one of the biggest stars ever. So, yeah, I don't. Geez, they have names.
Yeah, they do.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris. This is what we'll do. The
next time you're in New York, you're hanging out with me, the Trendsetter, and Jeff. We're going to Sapphires, these feature dances, and these. I'm going to show you a good time. Yeah, I'm not a Ric Flair, but I can show you a good time, Chris.
Sign me up.
There you go.
So
it's been set. It's on record. Chris is going to be hanging out with us in New York City nightlife.
So if you have time, Chris, go on YouTube, hit High Spot Podcast, and you'll see Bryan, you'll see myself, and you'll see the wrestling interviews, and then you'll see Bryan's stuff, and you can check it out too. That's the best I can say. And Bryan lives a charmed life, and Chris Van Vliet will also be at Ethan Page's Body Challenge in Tampa, Florida. So if you want to see those guns, you can go to Tampa, Florida, April the 3rd at 3 p.m., part of WrestleCon weekend. So, if you only got a little bit of sample in that interview with Dakota Johnson and Leslie Mann, you're going to get the full show, the gun show, in Tampa, Chris. We'll talk about that before.
Geez, I guess I better start hitting the gym. Yeah, Ethan Page puts together this great show, and I said, hey, do you need a ring announcer for that? He's like, oh, I'd love to. And then he goes, since it's a body guy show, do you have a shirtless photo of yourself? And I'm like, oh, wow, like, what a strange question for one man to be asking another man.
Not when I came from AVN, though.
I used to live in Miami, and I really leaned out, and I took these photos with this, like, world-famous sports photographer named James Woodley, and I was really lean and really ripped, and I'm like, yeah, I'd be happy to send you those photos if you're going to be putting them out for the world to see. So I don't know if I have to be. I don't think the ring. No one wants to see a shirtless ring announcer. So yeah,
I wouldn't say that, Chris.
I think I'll be keeping my clothes on, I think.
All right, Chris. Well, sorry, ladies. Ladies and gents, sorry about that. We tried, but Chris, man, I really appreciate it. What do you have going on in the next few months?
I mean, I'm just stacking up the interviews. I did 7 interviews last weekend in Atlanta, so you're going to be seeing a bunch of NWA stars, and I also did an interview with an AEW star who lives there. I am heading to Miami this weekend. I'm going to visit Sean Spears. He has a wrestling school just outside of the Orlando area. He runs that with Tyler Breeze. So I'm going to go in there and do some interviews with them, and I think maybe take some bumps. See if I can remember, what I learned, when I was 20. So that's basically what I've got going on right now, and I'll be there in WrestleMania weekend in Tampa. So if you guys are there, I'd love to see you. And if anyone listening to this is there, looking forward to seeing you.
That's definite. The Jersey Wrecking Crew will be there representing in Tampa Bay. And, we would love to see you, Chris. First round's on us. And what happens after that, we cannot talk about right now. Yeah. But no, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I must say one more thing before in closing, Chris. I just want to not just I might be pulling Vampire here, but complimenting you on what you've done. Jeff and I, like it mentioned before earlier, we're tremendous fans of yours, and I wouldn't say fans, just admirers of what you do. You've definitely showcased their hard work is paying off. You're living proof of that, Chris, and we greatly appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you down the road.
I appreciate the kind words. And Jeff, Bryan, thanks for having me on. You guys do a great job, and I wish you nothing but continued success as you continue on this journey.
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much, man. And definitely, don't be a stranger. Like I said, if you're in Tampa, we'll definitely, see you there. And, we'd love to have you back on down the road, Chris. So, enjoy it.
We'll eat at the buffet and then end at Baskin Robbins.
Yep. Take care, Chris.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, our thanks goes out to Chris Van Vliet. Tremendous interview, and that interview is brought to you by Collar and Elbow. It is an apparel brand founded by Al Snow. Make sure you shop online at collarandelbow.com. Right, High Spot Podcast, all in caps for your promo code, and save 10% on your entire purchase. You got to go to collarandelbow.com. Man, Trendsetter, man, he really is good at what he does, man. And if it rubs off on us just a little bit, I wouldn't mind.
He is the best in the world at what he does.
Yeah,
He'll be the first one to admit it. No, you're right. It's great to talk to Chris because I always sound like a broken record on this show. It's just so cool. The fact that we don't always agree with certain guests that we have on the show. We all have disagreements of viewpoints and stuff like that. But the one thing that can't be denied, Jeff, and for the crew that are listening right now, we thank you so much for listening and showing your support for the High Spot podcast was that we deal with people who have that one thing about them. They're very passionate about what they do. You sense the enthusiasm there. And with Chris, it's without question that he has that sense of enthusiasm. He fell in love with this industry for such a young age. He actually wanted to be a wrestler. And to see him transcend his passion into the field of broadcast and see what a great job he does. And, nowadays, Jeff, what we talked about during the show, very few interviews, quote unquote, are conversations, and Chris does a great job of combining the two both very well. His mixture of how he confines the comfort level with his guest, to how he transitions into certain topics, to how he makes everyone feel comfortable, and more importantly, how he makes his audience feel as if they're along for the ride, is a great job. And just like towards the end, we wish Chris nothing but the very best in 2020. Can't wait to see him in Tampa. He's going to be down to Tampa for WrestleMania, so we'll see him down there as well. And looking forward to many interviews he has, and it'd be great to have him back on the show again at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And man, one thing you could say is that that is kind of the template of what you want to be. You know what I mean? So like when you're able to talk to a contemporary or someone in that field and see their success, it kind of drives you. It kind of wants you. You kind of maybe work a little bit longer, work a little bit more on something, because it's the hard work that pays off eventually, and that's what
they say.
Yeah, that's that's the rumor.
Yeah,
going around too. But our thanks.
I don't sound bitter at all.
our thanks to Chris Van Vliet for joining us on the High Spot podcast on BodySlam.net and on the Shining Wizards Network. Also follow us on YouTube, High Spot Podcast. You can check out Adventures of the Trendsetter there as well. Subscribe and like, and also hit the notification bell, so whenever we decide to put on an episode here or there, you will be notified and you can watch it.
He's talking about me more than all. We consistently put episodes of the High Spot podcast on consistently. It's the Adventures of the Trendsetter that runs a little bit late.
Yeah, and
about a year late.
He's got a couple of new ones over there, and again, catch his stuff from AVN2 in the near and far distant future for the Trendsetter. And
I can't wait till I post it out next week, and then you have nothing else to say.
Throw it in my face, huh?
Yeah, not throw it in your face, but you'll have nothing anymore on it.
And I want to thank you for
I need your thanks
for Ellen Ox message. I really appreciate
yeah.
So I'll put that on Instagram just so that
that'll keep you warm in those cold winter nights.
It will. What I'm also thankful for Trendsetter is that I'm glad the Royal Rumble was actually Sunday, and I'll tell you why. Because
it was going to be another day.
No, it wasn't, because after the tragedy in the morning.
Oh, I got you.
From the Kobe Bryant news. And, some people are like, we'll never forget where they were. I was in front of the computer trying to set up stuff for the show, and then Bryan sends me a text. I wasn't on social media at all.
Yeah, I was at work.
Yeah, and you're telling me there's reports that Kobe Bryant died. And, first of all, you're in shock, and then you're hoping that it's inaccurate. You don't want anything like that to be true. And I'm looking, and then TMZ reports it, and then you start hearing it trickle down, and then you see people posting, and people being the first ones to post thoughts and prayers, or like to have the inside scoop. But then again, you're just kind of numb, and the only word I can say is it's tragic, because 9 people lost their lives. Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, and it just makes you think. And it's sad that we have to have tragedies like this to again reinforce the most important thing in life is that it's your loved ones, and tell the special people in your life that you love them. Don't take it for granted, because I told you this too, driving, was that the hardest thing in life is life, and you're not guaranteed the next day.
Nope.
And tomorrow's not promised. We could talk about WrestleMania, but it's a blessing that we're there. It's a blessing that we get to live, towards Mania. You don't think about that stuff with the hustle and bustle of your life and everything like that. We're just coming off the holidays, and we're coming into the Super Bowl. It was
tough holidays.
Tough holidays, and you make the excuse, I'll do something tomorrow, or I'll take care of this, and it's not promised. That's the only thing. Yeah. You could have your schedule planned for a week, and Super Bowl Sunday's coming up this Sunday, and
nobody's talking about the game.
And it's just an afterthought, and it's just tragic. I feel for the families, and I feel for everyone that's in mourning, because those athletes mean something to you, and to me it just really shook me, and it really made me appreciate things, and our condolences. And it sucks to end shows on these kind of somber notes, because we're on an energy high of WrestleMania. Chris Van Vliet was an awesome interview, the best there, but man, Yeah, that's only for a second. Then you go back to reality and you think about this and what's going to happen now. I mean, Kobe's funeral and just the 13-year-old, and other kids were on there. Man, it just, it just makes you appreciate life, Trendsetter. And I just want to say here to everybody here, hold the people you love tighter. Don't ever leave mad. Say I love you and treasure life because it's not guaranteed. And, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and families affected. And, it was just a crazy, crazy week. And that's why I thank God that for at least 4 hours, we were able to just to step away a little bit and watch the Royal Rumble and just get away from it. Because, that just would have been tough to take, like a whole day of just mourning.
Yeah, you're completely right, Jeff. And I can't really add anything more to that than we just said, right, too. We're very, we feel we're very mournful in terms of what's going on, and our condolences go out to everyone that was affected by it, not just the Bryant family. So, yeah, I mean, with that said, I can't add anything more to that. Just appreciate things you got. Very quickly, do we always complain about things we don't have or things we wish we did, and we don't really pay attention and emphasize of what we do have currently at that moment, which is probably the most important thing. So, yeah, I know I get better at times and get upset about certain things not going my way, or just the hustle and bustle of what Jeff and I deal with from day to day, which is no different than what everybody else has to deal with. But ultimately, the point Jeff would made and the point that I'll make too is just emphasize that just enjoy your time, because it's not guaranteed tomorrow. So live for the day, as the old cliche goes, and it's very true. So with that, we thank you guys for listening to the High Spot Podcast. We are grateful for each and every single one of you. For my tag team partner, Jeff Martin, I'm the Trendsetter, Bryan Berger. We are the Jersey Red Crew, and you've been listening to this episode of the High Spot Podcast. Guys, we'll catch you next week with a brand new episode. Looking forward to down the road towards WrestleMania, WrestleCon, all that great stuff in the world of professional wrestling. So, guys, thank you so much. And remember, in the years that go by, that Jeff and I continually do the show until we are so completely sick and tired of us, because Jeff wants the power chair and I want the power chair. And eventually we'll be like Mike and the Mad Dog.
You got the power chair.
Nah, that's true. And we don't talk during the breaks either. Just remember, guys, we do this for one reason and one reason only. We do this for you, the crew.